Women really don't talk about miscarriage very much, and I think it really helps to talk about it, to hear other women's stories. So I'm going to be sharing today about my experience with my miscarriage and what helped me through it. And I hope that it can help you as well. If you're new here, my name is Amalia. I'm a certified health coach and 500-hour certified yoga instructor, and I'm also a mom to a 6-year-old. So there's a surprising statistic about miscarriage. The American Pregnancy Association says that as much as 1 out of 4 pregnancies will result in a miscarriage, which is shockingly high. However, part of this number is also included chemical pregnancies, where you're technically pregnant, but you actually lose the pregnancy even before you realize that you're pregnant. So sometimes it can just appear like a kind of a strange period. However, it is still a really high number, which means miscarriage is a lot more common than we think. And it's incredibly likely that you know or have known someone who has gone through a miscarriage. I know that several people close to me have gone through miscarriages, and I was sad for them at the time when they told me about it. They didn't tell me very much about it. They just told me they had had a miscarriage. So I felt sad and I felt compassion, but I really had no idea what the experience is like until you experience it for yourself. And it is heartbreaking. It really is. For many of us women, we feel a connection pretty much immediately once we find out that we're pregnant. It's totally okay if you're someone who didn't feel that way. Sometimes you only feel that connection when you give birth. But I definitely was somebody who felt the connection right away, and it made it very difficult. I ended up miscarrying at 8 weeks. I had what's known as a missed miscarriage, where you're still technically pregnant. Your body has not released the baby, but the baby's heart has stopped. When I first found out I was pregnant, it was a little bit of a surprise. Not a complete surprise, but it was a little bit of a surprise. So I was excited, and I immediately made a doctor's appointment. Unfortunately, I couldn't use the same doctor that had helped me deliver my daughter because my insurance no longer covered him. So I had to find a new one. And this doctor didn't do any ultrasounds until 7 weeks. So I waited until my 7-week appointment, and I was really excited to hear the baby's heartbeat and maybe get a cute picture. And so at my 7-week appointment, the doctor, when he did the ultrasound, he looked very concerned, and he said that the baby had a very weak heartbeat, and the baby also had not grown to the size that it should have. Considering that I was 7 weeks pregnant, it was only showing 6-week growth. However, he said, don't worry, that can still change. We need to monitor this. So I'd like you to come back next week and let's see if anything has changed. So this was honestly already really devastating to hear. When you go in for your appointment, the last thing you expect to hear is that there's a problem. So I did cry and I was upset, but then I Googled and I spoke to people, and I kind of reassured myself that the baby would still be okay. And honestly, in some cases, it still is. It is true. It could change sometimes, but it can also be a first sign that it might not be a viable pregnancy. So for the next week, I was really hopeful. I tried to just be very careful. I think I barely moved that week. I just was trying to do anything I could to give the baby strength. I ate more than usual. I didn't really know what to do, and I prayed a lot. So I went to the appointment with my doctor the next week, and he did another ultrasound, and I was really hoping he was going to say, you know what, everything's great. It all worked out. And unfortunately, that's not what happened. He did the ultrasound and he said, the heart is not beating anymore. And so that was it. And I started crying, and I think I actually asked if anything could be done. I know that sounds funny, but you know, in that moment, you really are hoping, you know. So of course, nothing could be done. So then the doctor started telling me about options. So either I could wait to see if I would miscarry naturally. And luckily, he did tell me that he recommended I wait a little bit to see if I miscarry naturally. I do think that's the best way, and we'll talk a little more about why. The other options were to take pills. There's a prescription pill that you can take that will cause your body to miscarry in these situations. So that was another option. And then the third option was called a DNC, which stands for dilation and curettage, which is a surgical procedure where you go under anesthesia, and the doctor actually takes the tissue, he actually scrapes the tissue out of your uterus using a spoon-like tool called a curette. That's why it's called dilation and curettage. So I'm going to tell you a little more about each option, and I'm going to tell you what I ended up doing. I was pretty devastated, and I spoke to my sister, who's a nurse practitioner, and she's had 3 kids, and she told me to talk to her midwife. So I called my sister's midwife just to get her thoughts on things, and to be quite honest, I think there was a part of me that hoped the doctor was wrong, that maybe just he couldn't find the heartbeat, but it was somehow still there. So I called the midwife. She was very, very nice. She delivered all 3 of my sister's kids. So she knew right away who my sister was. And she said, you know, I'm really sorry to tell you, but unfortunately, if the doctor didn't find a heartbeat, that's final. There's no second opinion on that needed, especially since he did do a transvaginal ultrasound, which is pretty much the gold standard when it comes to any information you would need about a pregnancy. So she then told me right away, your doctor will likely tell you that you need a dilation and curettage, a DNC. She said, I very much encourage you not to choose this option. So I was surprised to hear this, and I asked why. And she said that in many cases, not always, but in many cases that she knew of, this procedure could cause scar tissue in the uterus to form, which could interfere with future pregnancies. So I was surprised to hear this, because I remember I did ask the doctor at the time, are there any side effects to this procedure? And he said no. And it could be that he personally has never had any side effects with his patients. Now, I'm giving you one person's opinion. I do have a lot of trust in midwives because they do have such a wealth of experience, and they tend to work a lot more deeply with their patients than a typical OBGYN. However, this is still one opinion. So I am not a doctor. I can't advise you what to do if you're in this situation and you're weighing your options. I'm just letting you know the information that I received and the choices that I made, and then you can make your best decision based on that. And then I always encourage you to do your own research. I think that's very important. So she highly discouraged me from getting this procedure. And so in the meantime, I was still technically pregnant, and my baby was no longer living, and I was very concerned. What do I do? Because I wanted to be able to grieve and to start to move forward, and I felt that I couldn't as long as things were not resolved. So the midwife, again, this is her opinion, she highly recommended just waiting and letting it happen naturally. And she said something that was very helpful. She said, as soon as you emotionally release your baby, it's more likely to happen naturally. it will probably happen much quicker the sooner you release him. And I'm saying him, but it's it. So she was right about that, because I think emotionally I was still really holding on to my baby. It was hard for me to accept. So the next thing that I did is I had a conversation with my acupuncturist. So I'm a huge fan of acupuncture. Acupuncture is the main method of medicine used in many Asian countries, including China, where it comes from. And I think that acupuncture is an amazing complement to Western medicine, because there are many areas where Western medicine does fall short. And one of those key areas is in female hormones. So I think acupuncture is incredible for anything involving female hormones. Not only that, but I think especially that, an area where really doctors don't seem to have a lot of success. So anything from miscarriage to getting pregnant to staying pregnant to issues with perimenopause and menopause, I think acupuncture is super, super helpful. So I had a conversation with my acupuncturist, and I told her about the situation, that I had a missed miscarriage and that I really wanted to miscarry naturally. And I asked her, does acupuncture have anything that can help this situation? And she was very sad. I think actually she did. She started crying. And she said, yes, there are needles that can help the uterus expel, and they're highly effective. But she felt a huge sense of responsibility. She said, I know that you already were told by your doctor that the baby's heart is no longer beating, but I would love for you to get a second opinion just to make sure, because by any chance, if there's any miracle, these needles are highly effective and they will work whether or not the baby's heart is beating. So I agreed that I would get another ultrasound. I didn't have my hopes up at this point, but I felt like it was the responsible thing to do. So I made an appointment, and then I took the midwife's advice in terms of emotionally releasing my baby. So I am not a religious person, but I am a spiritual person, and I do pray. So what I did is I prayed and I spoke to my baby. And this part you can do even if you're not religious or if you don't pray whatsoever. I spoke to my baby. I put my hands on my uterus, and I thanked my baby for the time that he was with me. I keep saying he. For some reason, I actually did have a strong intuition that this baby was a boy, although I could have been wrong. But for convenience's sake, I'll say he. So I put my hands on my belly and I thanked him for being in my life. And then I asked him, since his spirit had already left, to please help my body to expel his dead body. It sounds maybe a little weird, but I think our bodies are profound, and the mind-body connection is profound. So even if you're not religious whatsoever or not spiritual whatsoever, I think something like this can be really, truly helpful, because you are asking your body to be a partner with you in this process, rather than being angry at your body or working against it. So I did this, and I was supposed to go to the second ultrasound the next morning at a different clinic. And actually that evening, while I was giving my 6-year-old daughter a bath, all of a sudden I just felt the sensation of blood coming out of me. So it was pretty similar to kind of what it feels like when you first start having your period. At least for me, that was a similar sensation. Of course, the actual miscarriage itself, that was quite different, but the beginning of it felt like a period coming on. I was very fortunate some people have different levels of pain with a miscarriage. I was pretty fortunate that I did have cramps and it wasn't a walk in the park, but it wasn't that bad. It could be partly due to the fact that I regularly take magnesium, which is something that I always recommend to my health coaching clients. Magnesium is an incredible mineral that all of us need. It's a critical mineral and most of us are quite deficient in it. So that's a whole other video, but magnesium is amazing for any type of cramping, whether it's period cramps or cramps in the legs that many people get, which is a sign of serious magnesium deficiency. So magnesium is amazing for many things, but especially cramps. And I do think it's possible that that might have made my cramps lighter, but who knows? So the miscarriage itself lasted, it was heavy bleeding in the beginning for like pretty much a week. And then it just got lighter and lighter and lighter. So luckily, I really didn't need to do any interventions. So I did do a few things just to make things a little bit better. I took an herb called black cohosh. It's something that I researched on my own. Again, I'm not advising you to take this. This was a choice that I made. As always, do your own research. Black cohosh, it is natural and it's an herb, but herbs are also very potent. So make sure you read about it before using it if you do choose to use it. But what it does is it supports the uterus and it helps your uterus to expel anything it needs to expel. Because unfortunately, there is such a thing as an incomplete miscarriage where your body doesn't get rid of everything it needs to. So this is just a way to help it. And it was fine. It didn't increase my pain. It made me pee more often, but I didn't increase my pain. With black cohosh, again, if you choose to use it, and please do your own research on it, you don't want to take it for too long. Maximum 10 days, no longer than that, because it can also affect your liver. And if you do have any pre-existing liver issues, I don't recommend you take it unless a medical professional or a midwife tells you otherwise. The other thing I did, and this one everybody can do because this is super low risk, it's an old remedy. I drank red raspberry leaf tea, it's a lovely tea. It's got lots of great minerals for you. It's something that you can also drink during pregnancy. So if you get pregnant again, you can also drink it during that time. And all it does is just support a strong and healthy uterus. And it has a very nice mild flavor, so you can drink it hot, you can drink it iced. I'll put a link in the description to the one that I used, which is a good quality brand. So I drank the tea daily, I took the black cohosh, and I rested. Another thing I did during this time, which I think is super important, is I ate a lot of nourishing, high iron foods, because remember, during a miscarriage, you're losing a lot of blood. So you need to do things to replace that iron. You need to get your strength back. So strangely, this surprised me, but I was actually quite hungry. I didn't think I would be because of the emotional component of it, but I think just because my body was losing so much blood, I really needed to eat. So I just ate nourishing meals, pretty much the same as I always do, just a little bit more protein rich, maybe just a tiny bit more than usual. I ate until I felt full and I didn't worry about it too much. So iron rich foods can include eggs, chicken, beef, fish. If you have fish, try to eat wild caught fish, which is much better quality, much better for you. If you're vegan or vegetarian, lentils are an amazing source of iron. And even if you're not vegetarian, I recommend lentils. They're awesome. I'll also put a link to a lentil recipe below. Chickpeas are also great, as are black beans. Beans in general, but especially black beans. It's really important to eat nourishing, comforting foods. Soups are great. So in terms of other things that I did that helped me emotionally to get through this time, I found music to be really helpful. So I made a playlist on my Apple Music that was just dedicated to my baby's memory. And I put on it songs that just resonated with me at the time, that I felt like listening to, that felt meaningful to me. I'll put a link to that playlist below in case it's helpful to you, in case any of it resonates with you. But remember, the things that worked for me are not necessarily going to be right for you, but I'll link it anyway in case it helps. So I made a playlist, listened to it a lot. And another thing that is very important to me that I find really healing is movement. And that can mean many things. For me, dance has always been a part of my life in one form or another. And frequently my yoga practice also has an element of dance to it. So for me, what I would do is I would put on my playlist and I would just have my earphones and I would just do my sun salutations to the music. But sometimes a kind of improvised dance would end up being a part of it. I just moved my body in the ways that I was inspired to, but I found it really, really healing and helpful. Emotional release is really important at this time. I think our tendency with sadness is to just push it away and just get rid of it and say, I'm fine. But chances are you're not fine right now, and that's okay. Take this time to be with your sadness. And I'm not saying hold on to it, just sit in bed all day. I'm just saying it's important to find ways to release it. So whether that's movement, whether that's writing about it, whether that's talking to people that you feel comfortable talking to. I wrote a blog post, I'll link it below. And, even doing things like this, sharing this with you, this is helpful to me. And I hope that it's helpful to others as well. But back to movement. Movement is incredible, and it's an ancient technique actually for mourning and releasing sadness. So pretty much every indigenous culture has an element of dance that's connected with the mourning process. And it's very interesting. If you check out my blog post below, I have some links where they go further into studies that have been done on this, which is really cool. But I will say, I think it's a profound method of healing. In terms of other things that I did to heal, it was important to me to do things to honor the memory of this baby. And so there are people that do a kind of a funeral. I personally didn't want to do that. But what I did do is my husband and I had a drink at home. I'm not a big drinker, but we had gluten-free beer. We shared a drink and we made a toast to his memory, and we told him that he would always be a part of our family. And we just shared a drink together in his memory at home. And honestly, it was nice. For me, things that brought meaning to this were really helpful. The last thing I wanted to do was to act like nothing happened and it was just another day. To me, that was way more painful than doing something meaningful to honor the memory of this little spirit. So circling back to the physical component, once the bleeding did almost disappear, I did go back to my acupuncturist and I told her what happened, and I asked her if she could still do the needles for me to help expel anything, just because I just wanted to make sure that everything that was supposed to come out came out. So she did the needles for me. Nothing else came, but I did feel a little bit of cramping afterwards, nothing terrible. So I do think that that is definitely an effective option if you're debating things. That's definitely a possibility. always make sure that you work with a licensed and experienced acupuncturist. I've been working with my acupuncture clinic. There's a few different practitioners. They're all great. I've been working with them for a really long time, so I know everyone there, and I felt really comfortable going to them for this. So in terms of pregnancy after miscarriage, I'm still navigating this. You're gonna hear different opinions from everyone on this, honestly. So do your own research and go with your gut. I will say an interesting thing is that the body is actually more fertile in the month following a miscarriage than it normally is. So I found that really interesting. Some people will say that you can get pregnant as soon as your next menstrual cycle is over, which I do think it makes sense. That's actually something the midwife told me. The midwife, who I do trust her experience, she said, you really don't need to wait. Just, wait until you've passed your next period and then go for it. So she seemed very unconcerned about it. However, some doctors do tell you to wait longer, and maybe there are some circumstances for that. If your doctor tells you to wait longer, you might want to ask why, just to see if there are specific reasons why they might recommend that just in your situation. More knowledge is always better, right? But you will get quite a variety of opinions on this. So I encourage you to just do your own research and then trust your intuition. So above all, I just want to let you know, if this has happened to you, you're not alone and it's not your fault. Please, no matter what, don't feel guilty about this. Unfortunately, miscarriage is a part of nature and it happens, and it doesn't make it any less devastating, because it is devastating, but it's not your fault. It actually, unfortunately, this is a very sad part of the process of having children. I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to ask questions in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I can speak from my own experience and what was helpful to me. And in terms of future pregnancy, really taking care of yourself is always an amazing option. Keep taking your prenatal vitamins, because you're gonna need those minerals to replenish what you lost, and also to support a future child that you might have. So again, I'm a certified health coach. Most of my videos are not about miscarriage, they're about wellness. So if you're someone who's interested in wellness, consider giving my channel a subscribe. We have a lot of great videos on wellness coming up in the future, and I will be sharing future videos about how things are going, possibly in terms of future pregnancy, we'll see. And if this video was helpful to you, I truly appreciate it if you give it a like. It just really helps support the channel. Thank you for joining me today, and I'm wishing you so much healing. This too shall pass.